Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Wednesday from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Thank you so much for being with us. Joined now by Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. And Kyle, high school season winding down, getting close to the playoffs. As we were, 1 week away from ending the regular season?
Yeah, this is the final week of the regular season. The next week, the sectionals start, but not all of them. It'll be the 4A through 1A first round, and then I would say the full playoffs will be the following week, where you have 5A, 6A, and then of course, everything from 4A on down will be in the sectional semifinals, which is always it always feels like that's kind of the first full week of the playoffs. But next week, yeah, all the 4A, or not all of them, but all the teams who don't have buys from 4A on down will play. And there are some good games out there, but we're still a couple weeks away from all the big dogs really playing in 6A and 5A.
The Indiana Mr. Football race is not over by far, but it's with all of these games in the book, there has to be a group that is definitely forming for that. I know that lots of worthy candidates out there, guys that have had great runs. Mark Zachary, of course, AJ Reynolds right up the road in Martinsville is having a good run.
I'm going to go see Martinsville Friday, actually, play Plainfield. That should be one of the best.
What a segue. Damn,
yeah.
I'm good.
Thank you. But yeah, that should be, they're having a great season. This could be their first undefeated regular season since 1982. Of course, Coach Siderwitz was in charge of a lot of those teams back then, and they were always very good. But this is a fun team. Brian Duggar's done a great job kind of rebuilding that program. They have a young man, Hunter Stroud, at receiver, who's putting up incredible. He'll be over 1,000 yards probably after this game against Plainfield. Plainfield, very good team. They're going to run the ball. They're going to, they got two guys who can go for over 100 and have multiple times this year. So it's going to kind of be a contrast of styles to an extent. Martinsville likes to throw it, can run it, but also, they'll be up against it defensively against a really good. So this is basically the chance for Martinsville to win this conference outright, and then Plainfield, if they can win, they'll grab a share of the conference title because they lost to Decatur earlier this season. Martinsville beat Decatur in that crazy 35-point comeback game. So, but yeah, that's just to set that up, that should be one of the best games of the night on Friday, maybe the best game of the last week of the regular season, at least on paper. But yeah, Mr. Football, I would say, it's a year where I think, we kind of thought Mark Zachary going into it would be the guy, maybe the front runner. I don't think that's changed my mind a whole lot, on who, because even though they're 3-5, his numbers are still very good. He's a guy, and I broke all this down, if you check out the story we did even before the season, and then a couple weeks ago, October 3rd. So yeah, almost 2 weeks ago, wrote a story about some of the potential candidates for it. And, I think his overall body of work is going to put him up there pretty high. And who knows, they could make a run. They'll be somewhat of an underdog in their sectional, but this is also a year where 6A, there's no real runaway favorite necessarily. Brownsburg and Lawrence North are probably the two, they're the two undefeated teams right now, along with Crown Point, and then Westfield, which only lost to Brownsburg in a really close game. So those four teams may be slightly ahead, but I mean, there's teams like Warren Central, they've only lost one game. There's team, if you go down the list, I mean, there's just a lot. Cathedral is very good. They'll play Warren on Friday. There's a lot of teams, maybe more than I can remember, that have a chance. So I'm just, I'm saying Ben Davis, don't count him out. Don't count Zachary out. But, there's a lot of other players. And if you look at the history of this award, of course, it's a lot of skill position guys, quarterbacks, running backs especially, and then the occasional receiver. And this is a strong year for receivers. And Zachary's probably even more of a defensive, he could probably win Mr. Football defensive back, and that may be the route that ends up happening. And then to put his name in for the overall award. But there are a lot of good receivers. John Anthony Hall from Fishers. Davion Chandler's the name, I think, that keeps rising on the list from Lawrence North. He suffered a little bit of a shoulder injury on Friday. He came down hard on his shoulder, but I talked to him over text the other day. He said it's a sprain and he should be fine. He's icing it up, and I wouldn't expect he'll miss. Even if he doesn't play Friday, he'll be good for the playoffs. So I put him in the mix. Jackson Willis of Lutheran, a quarterback who's going to have unbelievable numbers by the end of his career. Already does. I mean, he's already over 8,000 passing yards for his career, so he's top 25 all time. Noah Ehrlich from Crown Point is another guy who a quarterback who's going to Miami of Ohio. Played in the state finals last year. I think he's a guy to look out for. Maverick Geske of Brebeuf, who's just putting up. Brebeuf has insane stats every week, and he's like breaking all-time records weekly, basically. And there's some other guys too. Deron Thomas from Concord, who's they're undefeated. Elijah Price, another guy from Ben Davis, who has great numbers at running back. Damian Shanklin, if you're looking for a defensive guy at Warren Central, he's had an outstanding career there. Brandon Logan, who's going to Notre Dame, he plays at Fort Wayne Snyder, another defensive back. So you can go down. I mean, there's several names you can kind of think of who'd be in that mix, and certainly that's not an encompassing list that I just mentioned, but some of the top guys anyway.
You mentioned that in 6A, there's no quote unquote juggernaut, basically, which is like college football. And I am loving now 2 different reasons. With college football, it's a combination of the transfer portal and NIL, but it has done. I don't even think that this was the intention, but what it has done is equalize all of college football, and it is great. There are no juggernauts. Texas looks like the best team, but there are a bunch of teams after that all have a shot. And no matter if it's college or high school, to me, that is much more entertaining. You don't know who's going to win. So many more teams have a shot. That brings more excitement and enthusiasm to the sport in general. And is there a reason why you think that is the case in 6A this year? They're just or teams just other teams just better, or they're just not some of the superstars that may have been there in the past?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things, and I would agree with you on the college football side. You look at Army and Navy I see your scroll there at the bottom, and it's got Army and Navy are both top 25 teams, and it's like, man, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's unusual, but
amazing. I
always like watching those teams anyway with their
Army Navy. How about Indiana? It's in there too. I mean, mention all those teams.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I just say Army Navy because I like their offenses. I was always I'm a wishbone guy, but yeah, I mean,
running that offense for 1,000 years, it seems like.
Yeah, but I mean, from a 6A standpoint, I think we kind of knew going in it was maybe going to be that type of year. Ben Davis lost. They had such a great senior class last year, and even they got pushed a couple times. Brownsburg was excellent last year. Center Grove was coming off 3 straight state championships. And they barely lost to Ben Davis, in the semi-state. So, there were some outstanding teams at the top last year, and I would say all 3 of those teams, certainly Ben Davis and even Brownsburg and Center Grove to an extent, are not as strong as they were last year. And then you look at the number 1 team, and it's Brownsburg, and they were 8-0 and ranked number 1. But I would say last year's team was probably slightly better than they are this year. But it's just that kind of speaks to, I'm not saying anything against them. I'm just saying that's kind of the nature of where we're at right now in 6A is very balanced, 1 through. And this is a great year for a team like Lawrence North, which does have a great senior class and is kind of has the juice to them right now with the speed that they have on the offense and defense. And they are taking full advantage. And you look at the games they've won the last 3 weeks. They've beaten Ben Davis, Warren Central, and Center Grove. Those are, you could argue those are the 3 predominant programs in Indianapolis and in the state in 6A year in and year out. They've beaten all 3 of them handily. Last week was the closest game they had against Center Grove of those 3 anyway. And it wasn't even, it was a 20-point game in the fourth quarter. So, it's amazing what they've done. They may be the team. The Lawrence North could be the team, and we don't probably give them it's almost like you have to prove it a little bit more when you're Lawrence North compared to a Ben Davis or a Warren, but they have done nothing but prove it so far. So this is a good year for them to be good. Although I will say, they have to match up with Cathedral most likely in the sectional after they have to play the rival Lawrence Central in 2 weeks too. So that won't be easy, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. I mean, I can't wait. It's kind of sets up as a, sort of a grab bag this year where you don't know game to game, who's going to be, who's going to come out, and that'll make it a more fun tournament, I think. And maybe we end up with some new blood in the state finals, and maybe we don't, but I think the route there is going to be more interesting than it has been, and it's always great. 6A is always so much fun, but I think it could be even more fun this year.
Absolutely. Kyle Neddenriep, thank you, sir. Make sure you're giving Kyle a follow and keeping up with all things that are high school sports in the state of Indiana through the Indy Star. Be a subscriber, keep local papers alive. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you, brother.
You bet. Thanks, Jim. Have a good day.
Absolutely. You too.